Hey guys, so I've already made an introduction video about attachment styles. Go check that out if you got no idea about the topic. It's titled Introduction to Attachment Styles. Just as a brief description, an attachment style is your unconscious way of perceiving and behaving in close and intimate relationships. It's like an unconscious program that makes you act a certain way in your social life, specifically in your romantic life, but also with friends. Some styles are dysfunctional, like avoidant, disorganized, anxious, preoccupied, and today we discuss avoidant attachment. A brief introduction. I would like to lay down some foundational cognitive psychology principles that will help you understand avoidant attachment. What you need to understand is that nobody can trigger you. No one can make you feel good or bad, it's all perception. Information comes in from the five senses processed by the brain, then it is given a perceptual meaning. From that meaning, the brain activates the nervous system and all other glands in the body to release hormones in response to the stimulus that is perceived. What I'm saying here is that pretty much all of your emotions are your own self-creations. The problem is that most people, and especially those with an insecure attachment style like avoidance, they tend to believe that emotions come from outside the body. They believe that other people and events make them feel things. It may sound like a shock to you, but I'm sharing very basic psychological principles that have been researched for decades. If you've gone through some kind of inner work yourself, you do know that by changing how you perceive and give meaning to a situation, you can change how you deal with it for the better, and also you can change your thoughts and emotions about it. So the way you see things makes you feel feelings about those things. The way you see things can be pre-programmed by childhood trauma, of course. And especially the quote-unquote global misperception of quote-unquote she, he, or they did this to me, that's why I feel this. Scratch your head, one person gets angry and the other doesn't. Or some people take all jokes personally, for example. Not because there's anything wrong in the situation or in the relationship. By nature of childhood programming, people with avoidant attachment style, their minds are prone to focus only on the flaws when it comes to romantic partners and love relationships in specific. If not from the start, gradually their minds start to intensively and obsessively search for all kinds of reasons as to why their partner is not the best they can get, even though the partner is totally okay and close to perfect on all levels. The relationship could be going really good also, but they still cut off things and run away out of the blue. The characteristic here is that they tend to perceive the self as higher than and above everyone else. They're not even aware of the fact that their minds are doing this, of course. It's all unconscious and quite unfortunate. Unfortunate because they tend to jump from one relationship to another looking for what seems to be someone who has no human flaws or can't make them feel negative emotions, will never trigger them, and will always make them feel positive emotions at all times. Lack of basic psychoeducation, psychological knowledge, is also a problem, and with an avoidant person, negative perception of others is even more intensified because of their attachment style. That's how their brains have been programmed to see the wrong. Now, most people on this planet think that other people make them feel negative emotions. This is wrong. You gotta make a lot of research around this to understand that your emotions come from the way your mind gives meaning to any situation or relationship. It's all information processing. Change the way you see things, everything changes, especially the way you feel about those things. But with avoidant attachment style, with avoidant people, this is even more intensified. Their minds are pre-programmed to look for negatives in the relationship and run away as soon as they find. Sometimes there's no negative at all in the partner, and gradually, eventually, they will leave the partner because that's how they're programmed. They're programmed to leave relationships, to run away. An avoidant is constantly suppressing negative emotions. When the emotion is too intense to suppress, he or she will start thinking that the relationship of the partner is responsible for the emotion lingering much longer in their body. I'm gonna say this again, focus. An avoidant is constantly suppressing negative emotions, automatically, unconsciously. That's how their mind works. That's how their mind deals with negative emotions. When the emotions are too intense, or when a specific emotion is too intense to suppress, he or she will start thinking that the relationship or the partner is responsible for the emotion lingering much longer than needed in their body. This way of seeing the self, other in the world, naturally leads to more increasing isolation and separation from other people. Nobody taught us that our perception, i.e. the way we see things, is what creates our emotional experience. Depending on the level of disturbance, the level of avoidance, because there's levels to it. Avoidant people have lots of suppressed emotions, and if they get triggered in any way during a relationship, they will break up and run for the hills. Some of them can't handle a simple argument, and at the first sign of relational trouble, they're out, instantly gone, boom. Others can maintain some kind of long-term relationship for a while, but then slowly start focusing on the partner's flaws and break up for no apparent reason at some point. A part of them knows that intimate relationships have a higher risk of feeling in general, positives or negatives. There's going to be drama, arguments, concerns, taking care of somebody else at times. It's a defense mechanism. They cut off people so they can rebalance their emotional state when emotions are too intense. They have been taught and pre-programmed to learn how to take care of their own emotions by themselves. Even arguments or problems in a relationship, they run away, they break up, and they feel like they need to take care of those emotions by themselves instead of talking it through with their partner, talking things through with the partner and fixing things. And it's quite toxic. This is all too unconscious, and they often see it as completely normal. They see nothing wrong in the way they are. Even when other people point out, they tend to perceive themselves as above self-development. When it comes to relationships, they often focus on gathering resources, like a narcissistic personality disorder person. Resources like sex, a little bit of intimacy maybe, attention, but as soon as they get triggered or feel satisfied, they're pretty much out of there. And you're left with a super confused look on your face, because even during the breakup they show zero signs of distress or empathy. No facial expressions, nothing. They've completely checked out, as if you are a total stranger to them. Even if the breakup happened just about yesterday. So to summarize, avoidant people freak the hell out if they start feeling too much in one go. They're okay with suppressing temporary negative feelings, but when it comes to long-term relationships, they will run away at some point, often sooner than later. They can't handle any arguments, problem solving, discussing a partner's concerns, talking about your feelings. All of this makes them feel like they are getting too close to somebody. Intimacy to the avoidant means closeness. Getting close is not safe, it's dangerous. Dangerous because every time they got close to the mother to regulate their negative emotions, they got dismissed in the harshest of ways and left alone to deal with their mental state by themselves. Physical and emotional affection was not consistently provided by the mother, especially the mother, or the primary caregiver. Could be grandmother, of course, or anybody else. Primary caregiver, especially. Therefore, they learned from an early age that, quote-unquote, if I get close, I might get rejected and feel bad, very bad and unsafe. Therefore, I have to make sure there's distance between me and my loved ones. This is love. This is why anything intimate triggers their attachment system. Anything intimate like arguments, fights, concerns from the partner, especially fixing those arguments, because fixing arguments makes people get closer and deepens the attachment between two partners. All of these things trigger them to cut off and run. Also, things like feeling controlled or they need to do favors for the partner can be triggering. They can also get triggered out of the blue even if a relationship is going very well. This is because they perceive that if a relationship is going well, it's probably going somewhere, as in towards a marriage or overall more closeness. They might be comfortable with some closeness, but if things get long and consistent, stable, they can also get triggered to leave you. They simply don't do well when it comes to forming, entering, and maintaining long-term relationships. Friendships can be fine. They can make friends. Their attachment disturbance is mostly seen by their romantic long-term partners. They tend to treat their close friends with more care, but if it's the intimate partner, they'll get most of the suffering. They will suffer the most from their attachment disturbance. They tend to be very cold and emotionless from the first time you text these people. This is the one or two words text or one sentence text type of person with the least emotional expression possible. On dates, they're also like this. Compared to the preoccupied who texts a lot, often too much, and even talk a lot on dates and also interrupt others quite a bunch. Avoidants have trouble expressing emotions or being emotional in general. Flat facial expressions, difficulty laughing or smiling, even if the joke is good, difficulty getting jokes and not being able to maintain a smile, not being able to be empathetic, connect with you, feel you, not being able to maintain a smile as normal as or as long enough for it to be perceived as an actual smile. Sometimes this happens, not always, but sometimes. They're the opposite of a serial monogamist. They can go years without entering a relationship. They have this unconscious belief that one day they're gonna meet an ideal person who is amazing on all levels. Say they meet this perfect man or woman, they still will unconsciously slowly start focusing on negative aspects, real or imaginary, or even trivial, very small and unimportant negative aspects of their partner, the closer they get to them. And avoidants don't even know that their minds are actually pre-programmed from childhood to do this. Their minds are programmed to start seeing the negatives in the relationship and in their partner, even if those negatives can be fixed. They try to keep them inside, they don't discuss with the partner, and at some point they use those negative views about the partner that actually can be fixed by talking to the partner, they use that to break up. Because their minds are programmed to bring them back to a state of being alone. They focus on what is wrong in you and in the relationship. This is the opposite of an anxious, preoccupied person who's always focused on what is good in the partner. Not only that, but the preoccupied would exaggerate the positive perception of their partner, often seeing positive qualities that are not even there. This is also because the preoccupied are very anxious without a partner and afraid of being abandoned in relationships. They need someone around to feel safe and functional. And so they're susceptible to staying with even the most dysfunctional and abusive partners. And this includes, of course, avoidance, because they can be very abusive at times with their dismissiveness. If you have a dismissive avoidant attachment style, you're not scared of people leaving you as much. It's almost always a relief because you have been conditioned to feel fear when people get close and to feel relieved when you're on your own. The absolute opposite of a preoccupied. Dismissive avoidance can be very charming and the best at getting one-night stands, but the worst at entering and maintaining long-term or even short-term healthy relationships. They will make sure not to text you back or see you for a second time because that's their nature. They're scared of things getting too intimate and it's all too unconscious. Some of them do realize that they're scared of getting close. Throughout the years, they do some kind of self-discovery, maybe some self-development, and they start to realize all of this stuff, but most of them won't. A dismissive avoidant will rarely, very rarely, sit down to reflect on their behavior or on what they did wrong. They might do that only if the situation serves their basic needs, not because they want to maintain or build the relationship further. Avoidant attachment style and narcissism. Avoidant attachment is characterized by lack of mental state monitoring and processing. There's a lot of suppression going on, and many times these people don't know what they're really feeling on a moment-to-moment basis, and they can't put feelings into words. This is, of course, depending on the degree of attachment disturbance. This goes for everything you heard so far in this video. It's all about levels. Some are okay with closeness more than others, of course. Often they feel more through the body, more physical sensations. So you'll find them very consistently engaged in the pursuit of physical pleasure like sexual conquest, sports, traveling, overworking. In general, because they can't feel much, they're not really familiar with how others feel. If you can't feel your own emotions, how can you feel other people's, right? If you can't feel your own emotions, then you can't feel others. This lays the ground for something called quote-unquote lack of empathy. This is the main characteristic to narcissistic personality disorder. You can have avoidant attachment style and narcissistic personality disorder both at the same time. This is not always the case because attachment styles fall into the category of psychological attachment disturbance, and personality disorders are a separate category of psychological dysfunction. One is an attachment disorder or an attachment disturbance, and the other one is a personality disorder. With that said, however, if you have avoidant attachment, you will eventually behave in ways to distance yourself from others, often by any means necessary, narcissistic means. For example, avoidant people are the ones who cheat the most in relationships compared to other attachment styles. Preoccupied people can cheat as well, depending on the degree of preoccupation and attachment disturbance. Cheating helps avoidants to create that emotional distance from their partner so that they don't feel like they're suffocating or that things are getting too close. Avoidants can't help but cheat. It's often automatic. This is what I meant by narcissism or unconscious narcissism. It's actually very difficult to draw the line between narcissistic personality disorder and avoidant attachment style because they got so many traits in common. In general, there's a degree of narcissistic behavior in people with avoidant attachment style, and let's just agree on that. Oftentimes unconscious behavior, and they're not really aware of what they're doing. Some of them can recognize that, for example, lying and cheating is wrong and try to improve themselves, of course. I've had also avoidant friends myself who are well able to apologize for mistakes and try to improve themselves. So, empathy, self-reflection, and lack of it is what sets apart avoidant attachment from narcissistic personality disorder. If you have narcissistic personality disorder, you cannot really apologize for anything. You can't feel any remorse or guilt. You see, there's some similarities but subtle differences. But looking at the research in this field, it appears to be that avoidant attachment developed in the first 2 years of life lays the groundwork for the easy development of narcissistic personality disorder later on in adult life. And even if an avoidant doesn't develop a narcissistic personality, they may still treat people sometimes in ways that show no concern for their emotional well-being. This is because they have a very hard time feeling or even distinguishing what somebody else is feeling on a moment-to-moment basis. Exaggerated exploratory behavior. Doing things, activities, having addictions, being extremely busy with work or other things helps the avoidant person to suppress thoughts about intimacy and dating. They usually get somebody and then move on to the next and the next. They don't even feel comfortable having a short-term situation in which they meet the same person regularly. This exaggerated quote-unquote exploratory behavior or indulgence in perpetual activity helps the avoidant person to stay away from love. Love means arguments sometimes. It means problem solving, depending on someone else and being responsible for another person at times, requiring to improve oneself if the partner points out our flaws, getting close, building something, expressing emotions and concerns. All those things the avoidant want to stay away from because there's just too much. They're just too much, too scary. They don't meet people again after an initial sexual connection quite often. They don't text back, they flake a lot, they have all kinds of addictive behavior to work, to sex, to new people, to alcohol, and or other means of distraction. This is what I mean by exaggerated exploratory behavior, exploring the environment more in an exaggerated addictive way. By the environment, I mean life. They fill their lives with so many activities, doing things, to forget about getting close to someone, and to also suppress emotions and stress in their daily life. And when it comes to dating, they get close just enough to satisfy their sexual needs, and then they leave or lose interest and want something new. The seeking of a new sexual conquest is also considered an activity. And if you're always on the hunt for new partners, this in and of itself is an activity, an addiction to indulge oneself in, and also helps to forget about the people you already met in the past and to move on quickly. So for the avoidant, it's all about filling your life with positive emotions, inducing activities, and addictive behavior. Being engaged physically, walking, doing something with your hands, doing some kind of activity is what helps you maintain emotional homeostasis or balance, and especially doing things that would help you to stop thinking intimately about your partner or a recent date. Another type of addiction can also be mental activity, like getting lost in social media, etc. The closer you get to somebody, the more flaws you see in them as an avoidant person, and you start exaggerating these flaws in your mind, not being aware that your mind has totally forgot about all the good and the positive in that person. So, if you have avoidant attachment, this means in general, and to summarize, you can't feel emotions or express them most of the time. You've had it a few times where people told you that you acted in ways that hurt their feelings, or that you did things in total disregard of how they will feel. You may have heard people tell you that you betrayed them emotionally or physically in one way or another. You may hear partners tell you that you come across as uninterested in solving relationship problems, incapable or hearing or validating your partner's concerns, emotions, and incapable of saying the right thing to soothe and calm the concerns of your partner. You're not comfortable with long-term relationships or the idea of meeting someone for a second time after an initial sexual contact. This is true in general for most avoidants. So that would be it for today, guys, and in the next one we're gonna be looking at how to fix avoidant attachment style. This was just theory, but of course we start with theory, and understanding in and of itself helps us bring about insight. If you're interested in accelerating the process of healing your attachment style or any other psychological problem that you're experiencing right now, low self-esteem, anxiety, depression, any kind of mindset issues in dating, business, personal life in general, you should check out my Peak Transformation course. It's included in the Peak Transformation membership. Link in the description below. Like, leave a comment, share the video with someone in need, someone who has avoidant attachment style, your partner maybe. And see you next week.